Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our webinar, Your Rights After Brexit. My name is Simon Lawson and I'm the Chief Executive at Citizens Advice Richmond. We offer a range of services that are funded by Richmond Council to help EU citizens deal with Brexit. We have webinars, presentations, talks and one-to-one advice. If you need any further advice, we are here to help. Contact details are on our website, which is behind each of the presenters, along with our telephone number. I'm now going to hand over to our expert advisor to begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Harron and I'm the EU caseworker at Citizens Advice Richmond. And my job is to advise EU citizens on how to make settled status applications, how to apply for British nationality if they wish, and generally rights in the UK after Brexit. This webinar is part of a series. We've also had a webinar on applying for settled status, on applying for British citizenship for both adults and children, and this is the third one entitled Your Rights in the UK. I'm going to do a brief recap on some of the main issues arising if you wish to apply for British nationality, both for adults and children. I'm also going to look at a brief overview of some of the issues arising from settled status, although we appreciate that most of you will already have applied for settled status. And then we're going to spend most of the time looking at your rights generally in the UK following Brexit. First of all, I'm going to look at the question of registration of children of EU nationals as British citizens. So just a brief recap. If a child of an EU citizen is born in the United Kingdom, they won't, by that means alone, by being born in the UK, be a British citizen, except in very rare cases. However, if one or both of the parents become either British citizens or get settled status, then the child can be registered as a British citizen. So this is similar to the process of naturalization for adults, but it's much more straightforward and there are many less requirements. Basically, it's automatic. So the child has to be born in the UK. The child has to still be under 18, and as I said, one or both, not necessarily both, one or both parents become British, obtain settled status, that's full settled status, not pre-settled status. There are two other categories as well, which are less common. One of the parents obtains indefinite leave to remain, or one of the parents obtains a permanent right of residence document. Those are going to be quite rare. Now, the reason for mentioning this again is, as we said last time, there is a court case about the fee payable on registration. At the moment, the fee is £1,012, a lot of money, and that is much more than the cost to the government of processing the application. So there is a court challenge. The court hearing was on the 6th of October. We don't yet have a court decision. We expect that probably the end of December or early January. So if you want to hear more about this, at the end of the presentation, we'll show you how you can sign up for email updates. That's email news from us on matters affecting EU citizens. This will be one of the matters we will email you as soon as we have a decision on. The next matter I'm going to look at is the question of issues about naturalising for adults. Now, again, just a quick recap on the advantages of British citizenship and what you need to look out for. You must check before you apply for British citizenship whether you can actually do so without risking your own nationality. This is a question sometimes called dual nationality. So you will need to check with your embassy, are you allowed to be a dual national? Some EU countries allow dual nationality, others do not. This is not something we can advise on because it is a question of French, of Portuguese, of Estonian law. It's a question for your home state. So please check on that before proceeding with an application for British nationality. There are basically 4 advantages in applying for British citizenship. First of all, there's the right to vote in national elections. That's a vote for our parliament. The question of rights to vote in local elections is complicated. EU citizens already have a right to vote in local elections in Scotland and in Wales. In England, the position is complicated. The British government is making arrangements with each individual EU country, and listed on screen are the 6 countries with which the UK has made an arrangement. So, for example, if you're a Portuguese national, you can vote in local elections here in England, and British citizens in Portugal can vote in local elections in Portugal. So this will cover things like voting for your local council. This is Richmond upon Thames Council, voting for the London Assembly, voting for the London Mayor, that kind of thing, local elections in England. The second point is that British citizenship is not lost after 5 years absence from the UK. That is different from settled status. Settled status, it gives many of the rights of British citizenship, but it can be lost, will be lost by 5 years complete absence from the UK without returning in that time. Thirdly, if you or your children want to join the British Armed Forces, then they will normally need to be British citizens. There are certain exceptions for Commonwealth countries, that's old British colonies, but they don't apply to EU countries. And then finally, for most jobs in the British civil service, British citizenship is required. So that's really the points you want to bear in mind. You may not be concerned about these. Clearly, you do not have to apply for British citizenship. Settled status gives you long-term residence in the United Kingdom. Now, as we mentioned at the last webinar, recently there has been a lot of concern about the question of health insurance and naturalisation. This is a complicated subject, but I'll briefly try to summarise it. Initially, when the settled status scheme was set up, the information on the government website said that EU citizens could apply for British nationality 1 year after they had obtained settled status. There is an exception. If you're married to a British citizen, there is no 1 year waiting period. But for most EU citizens, you have to wait for 1 year after applying and obtaining settled status before applying for British nationality. Now, earlier this year, further information on the government websites made clear that the British civil servants interpreted the law on nationality to mean that the EU citizen had to be technically lawfully here in the 5 years before the application. Now you may say, well, I've got my settled status, that means I was living in the UK for 5 years, surely that's enough. Well, that's what most people thought. However, there's a rather technical distinction between living in the UK without any practical problems and technically what's called exercising treaty rights, so technically having a right to be here as an EU citizen. And the issue is that if somebody is self-supporting, so they're keeping themselves, they're not working, they're living on their savings, or if they're a student, then under European law, they were supposed to have what's called comprehensive sickness insurance. So it's a sickness insurance covering basically all health risks. So the issue then was, is this going to cause a problem for people applying for naturalisation? So the first thing to say is there is some government guidance on this, but it's not very clear. It says that a discretion can be exercised. Now, we think a very short period without insurance when it is required will not be a problem. That's really common sense, but it doesn't go beyond that. And it's perfectly possible for this requirement to be forgotten about, to be waived, but at the moment there is no move to do that. So this this worry, if you like, is only going to be relevant for people who are not relying on periods when they're working. So they're not taking into account periods of working, self-employment. When you're working, when you're self-employed, when you lose a job and you're looking for work, there's no requirement to have any private health insurance. So if your period you're relying on for your naturalization is a period of working, a period of self-employment, a period of looking for work, one or two other things, maternity leave, not a problem. A bit more detail, and this is complicated, so please don't worry if it sounds too much to take in. We can always ask questions later, and of course you can send your private questions to us. We'll give you the details at the end of the webinar. So normally a person who applies for naturalisation, it's an adult applying for British citizenship, has to show they're lawfully resident for 5 years in the UK. It's shorter if you're married to a British citizen, it's actually 3 years, but for most people it's going to be 5 years. Now, you don't have anything to worry about if you have indefinite leave to remain. That is lawful residence, so there's no health insurance required from the time of having indefinite leave to remain. That's quite rare, but some EU citizens have this. It was only granted up to 2006. For any period you have settled status or pre-settled status, that will be quite short, but again, there's no requirement of any health insurance. Some of you will have something called a permanent right of residence document. If you do, you'll see the word permanent. Again, once you have that, there is no requirement of health insurance. Most importantly, if somebody has 5 continuous years working, or including self-employment, or registered, that means applied at the job centre and is looking for work, again, there is no requirement of health insurance, and any family members of people in those categories, again, there's no requirement of health insurance. So it's actually going to be quite rare, but it is causing a lot of worry, and I actually had in the last 2 days 2 separate inquiries about this. These were 2 EU citizens who wanted to apply for British nationality, were worried about this. In one case, it needed some research, but the EU citizen had no problem, they were exempt. The other one is slightly more complicated, but again, I'm happy that if we take the various things he was doing in the UK, he will come under one of these exceptions. So I think the main thing is to say is don't worry too much about this. It's going to apply to quite few people. The government have said they will exercise a discretion, not clear exactly what that means. And you know, if we think there is a risk, you can actually always just wait. That might mean waiting a couple of years, but this rule will only apply for periods before settled status. So as time goes on, it will become less important. So any questions about this? Usually questions about this are quite complicated, so it will be easier if we take them after the meeting, because I will need to ask you some further information. So that's really the issues with registration. The big issue is the court case. With naturalisation, the big issue is this worry about the need for private health insurance. But as I say, it won't apply to most people. We can always advise you on this. So I'm then going to look at some issues about settled status. Again, most of you will now have applied or be applying. So let's just look about what settled status, the requirements briefly, and what it means. So as you probably know, EU citizens, most EU citizens will have to apply for settled status. That's permanent residence in the UK. The exceptions are if you've already become a British citizen. Obviously, there's no need to apply. Irish citizens, citizens of the Irish Republic, are not required to apply, and anybody who has something called indefinite leave to remain does not have to apply. Now, this last category sometimes causes confusion. The British government stopped giving indefinite leave to remain. It was replaced by something else in 2006. So if you arrived after 2006, you will not have indefinite leave to remain. You had to apply for it. So again, if you didn't fill in any forms, you won't have it. And you should have a card if it's very old, if it's in the early 1990s or the 1980s, it could be a stamp in your passport. You do not have to apply for settled status if you have indefinite leave to remain, but there are advantages. If you have the old stamp in the passport, it's easy to lose. People may not understand what the stamp means. Secondly, probably more importantly, is settled status is only lost by 5 years out of the UK. The indefinite leave to remain is lost by 2 years out of the United Kingdom. So if you wish to travel, to return to your home country, to look after relations, you might want to spend some time out of the UK. The advantage is with settled status is it will not be lost with less than 5 years out of the UK. If we then just look at the effect of settled status, most of you know this already. It's a right to remain, so it's a right to reside, to live in the UK, to work in the UK indefinitely. It's only lost, as I said, by 5 years absence from the UK, and settled status gives you full rights to benefits and public housing. Pre-settled status, so this is the application you can make if you don't have 5 years living in the UK, and then when you have 5 years you could apply to change that to settled status. By itself doesn't give full access to benefits. I mean by benefits what's called means tested benefits, so not insurance benefits but benefits that depend on low income and low savings. But you could, and many people with pre-settled status will be entitled to benefits and public housing, basically because they've worked or they've recently worked, they've lost their jobs, then been made redundant. So that's a complicated area, but again, it's something we can advise on. Just a word about family members of EU citizens who have settled status. So if you have a close family member, spouse, child, what's called dependent parents, who are your dependents, those family members can enter the UK at any time. Okay, so these are existing family members. Children who are born or children adopted after December, 31st of December, after the end of what's called the transitional period, can again freely enter the UK. In the case of family members who are not children and who are new family members, so a new partner, it doesn't mean that those people cannot enter the UK, but it means they'll have to apply as non-EU citizens. So they will be exactly the same position as somebody who meets somebody who wants to join them as a family member from Canada or Japan. Exactly the same rules will apply. They are more difficult, but they're not impossible. We can advise on these rules. Now, a word about this causes a lot of worry. A word about how do you prove your settled status? So those of you who have applied will know that you get an email with the decision. And the decision gives you a link, if you like, to a government computer. It also sends you an attached letter which you can print. EU citizens do not get a residence card, so there is no card. Okay, the results are online on a government database. Oddly, if you have a family member, so for example a spouse who's a non-EU non-EU citizen, so you're a French citizen, you have a spouse who's Japanese, the Japanese citizen does get a residence card. Very odd. Now, recently, in the last few weeks, unfortunately, our Parliament voted not to give EU citizens a right to a residence card. There was a proposal that EU citizens could request a residence card, and there could be a fee, but it would be probably the same as a UK passport, about £80. Unfortunately, this was lost in the UK Parliament, and it's very unlikely in the foreseeable future, if the government will change its mind. The government is deciding to move gradually to all databases and no cards. This is their intention, and this will be for all non-British citizens in the UK. So how do you prove your status, and what do you need to worry about? Well, the first thing is that public authorities, in practice, in our experience, will accept a printout of the decision. So we would advise when you get the email to print out some copies of the letter. And certainly when we're helping people with benefits and housing, we find that public bodies do accept this letter. Now, private landlords and employers they're required to check the immigration position of people applying for housing and people applying for employment. The government has confirmed that landlords and employers should only accept a passport and not require any other proof from EU citizens until the end of June 2021. So that's exactly the same now. A passport is proof that you are here lawfully in the UK. The deadline for settled status, there has been a small change here. Most of you probably know that EU citizens are expected to apply for settled status by the end of June 2021. So that's not the end of December, the end of the transition period, but 6 months later. Obviously, it's a good idea to apply earlier, but the deadline is the end of June 2021. Now, the government has recently announced that a late application can be made, and the wording is if there are reasonable grounds. And they give examples of children in care, examples like that. Now, we have a number of clients who, due to the virus, are not able to deal with the scanning. Many of you will have applied already, and you'll know there are 2 stages. You scan your passport, you take a face shot, and then you do an online application. But some people are not able to do the scanning themselves, and they come to us or they come to the council. Now, at the moment, both those services are shut. So we've kept a list of the people we will be helping. Now, there's no reason to believe that the scanning will not start again before June, but if there is a problem and it gets near the deadline, this will not be a difficulty for those people. They had reasonable grounds, they weren't able to do the scanning themselves. They had a good reason. They will not have a difficulty with a late application. But we're not suggesting that any of you who have not applied, we would suggest you try your best to apply before the end of June, simply because private landlords and particularly small employers may not understand that the deadline has been extended. So I'm now going to look at the various questions about the rights of EU citizens in the UK after Brexit. So not the question of settled status or nationality, but just a mix of things that affect you. Now, the first thing to say is that the EHIC card, this is the European health card for visitors, that is still in force until the end of December. In practice, most people, of course, will not be travelling in that time, but it does remain in force. Now, after that date, EU nationals in the UK can still use and obtain still use their existing card and can obtain a new EHIC card. So that will be useful for travelling to other EU countries. You may be able to use your own health service, but if not, use the EHIC card, and you can use the EHIC card for travelling to an EU country that is not your own. Now, that does not apply at the moment to British citizens, so you might need to think about that if you're thinking about applying for British nationality. There are negotiations, but at the moment there is no agreement on extending the EHIC card. What that means is that at the moment, a British citizen who wishes to travel to Spain next year on holiday would have to take out private insurance policy or arrange for the return home or pay for treatment in Spain. Whereas the EU citizen living in the UK, travelling again, let's assume they're a German citizen to Spain on holiday, could use their EHIC card to use Spanish medical services. EU citizens at the moment pay the same fees as UK students. That's not the higher rate paid by non-EU students. That's the case for courses starting this year. So EU students who start a course in 2020 will continue to pay the same fees, which are very high, of UK citizens, I'm sorry, through the length of their course. And then some other matters. We always get a lot of questions on the topic of National Health Service. Can you access the National Health Service? The answer is absolutely. With settled status, you are living in the UK or residing here. The test for access to the National Health Service is, do you ordinarily live in the UK? You do ordinarily live in the UK. There is no question you have access to the UK in the same way as British citizens. We also get a large number of questions on pensions. This is a complicated subject, but I can say very simply there is nothing to worry about with pensions. So if we look first at private pensions, a private pension is just a contract. So you're paying money, and in return you get your contributions back, and you get all the income from the investment. And that's exactly the same as any other contract. It doesn't matter whether the UK has left the European Union, those private pensions are still payable. There is then the question of the state pension, in the UK called the state retirement pension. Again, many of you will have worked in the UK, you will have paid national insurance contributions, and you will receive a UK pension. So there's a number of topics here. The first one is there was a special European law that meant that somebody working in different EU countries could take advantage of their contributions paid in different countries, so they didn't lose out. So, for example, if a pension requires, in this country, requires 30 years contributions, and you worked 15 years here and 15 years in your home country, you have the 30 years contributions. So the agreement was that EU countries would take into account here contributions paid in the various EU countries. That has not changed. That agreement has been renewed. That's already renewed. It's not being negotiated, so there is no change. Your pensions will take into account your various contributions in different EU countries. You won't lose out by moving, and you won't lose out as a result of Brexit. The final point to say about pensions, which is not really a Brexit matter, is that the state retirement pension in the UK is slightly peculiar, and that's because you can take the pension abroad, so you can receive the state retirement pension while living in another country, but the pension is only what's called uprated. It's only increased if you live in certain countries. And the list of countries is really not very rational, but the existing agreement between the EU countries continues, so that, for example, if you have a UK state retirement pension and you go to return to your home state or to live in another EU country, then the UK pension will be increased in exactly the same way as it would be if you remained in the UK. So moving to another EU state does not affect your state retirement pension. And I've then got some information sources for you. Firstly, if you want to obtain advice from us, probably the easiest way is to email us. So the address is there on screen, and these slides and the recording will be on the website probably within a week. You can also telephone, although email is probably better, because of course you can give us more information, and the more information we have, the better. If you wish to telephone, there is the number. The lines are open Monday to Friday from 10 to 4, and there is a voicemail service outside those hours. The third information source is we have Brexit updates, so you can sign here and you can receive updates from us on news relating to Brexit. So, for example, the court case on children registering to be British citizens, things like that. Any news developments that affect you, we will usually send out a mailing about once a month. And then we have some information sources from the government. You can also receive email updates from the government. Apparently now 4 million applications for settled status have been made, so vast majority of EU citizens have applied. There's also a very good government website which sets out the requirements for naturalising. That's an adult becoming a British citizen. So it's worth having a look at that if that's what you're considering doing, but please remember to check with your embassy whether you can be a dual national, whether you can have 2 nationalities or more. And then there's also a government website on the requirements for a child registering as a British citizen, but remember the question of the court case, and maybe it's worth waiting. So that's the end of our webinar presentation, and we're now going to have a session of questions and answers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bradley Johnson. I'll be running the Q&A session with Mike. So I am copying over details that are coming through from the Q&A onto some screen slides, which we will then read out for everybody. So Mike, our first question is, I have settled status and I own a limited company. I have read that as an EU national with settled status, I would need to employ a British national to keep owning the company or being its director.
Yes, I'm afraid I really don't know where the questioner is getting this information from. So the questioner has settled status. The questioner owns, so it could be a shareholder, but is a director of a limited company. There is certainly no requirement of an EU national or indeed anybody else to employ British nationals to remain being a director. The questioner might be thinking about the new work immigration rules that come in from January. I'm not going to talk about these today because they mostly affect non-EU citizens. So from January, there are new immigration rules allowing people who are non-British citizens to enter the UK to work. They're sometimes called Tier 2. Now, under the existing rules, it is right that there was a requirement to advertise jobs first in the UK, and if there was a shortage of people applying for those jobs, only then to advertise overseas. That's correct. I think that's what the question was talking about, but that is no longer the case. It doesn't mean that employers can freely admit overseas employees. There are still requirements, and in particular, an employer has to be registered with the government. So not every employer can employ foreign workers to enter the UK. There are also rules on the level of earnings. So I really am not going to talk about that because they don't really affect directly EU nationals, but it's certainly not the case that to remain a director of a UK company that you have to employ British nationals or any number of British nationals. That's not the case.
Okay, our next question is, I am married to a British person. No, I am married, sorry, but my EU partner lives in a different EU country. Part one is, do they have to come to the UK before Brexit actually happens? And part two, do they have to be in the UK before applying for British citizenship?
Yes, okay, thank you. So first of all, I'm assuming that the questioner has settled status.
Sorry, the questioner is a British citizen, sorry.
Right, okay, this then becomes rather complex. Let's take the reason it becomes complex is, sorry, do we know whether the questioner is a dual national, whether the questioner is an EU / British national?
I don't, sorry.
Okay, okay. Right, I would try to answer the question, but also not to confuse people. So we will assume that the questioner is a British citizen and not a citizen of an EU country and a British citizen. Now, the problem there is that the settlement scheme and EU law generally gives very limited rights to a British citizen. Keeping it very simple, a British citizen can use the scheme if they've worked in another EU country and then they've met their family member there. Okay, so that's to do with free movement, if you like. But the fact that somebody is British and they have an EU partner, by itself, that doesn't mean they can use the scheme. So, if the questioner is a dual national, so they were an EU national and they became British, then they can use the scheme. They count as somebody who can use the scheme. If they are solely a British citizen, it's in very limited circumstances they can use the scheme. Okay, you can see how complicated this is getting. So let's assume that they are a dual national. So they've got French citizenship and they became British, but they retained their original citizenship. So the answer is this is an existing family member, so it doesn't matter whether that person enters by the 31st of December or not. That is not a problem. It's an existing family member, it's not a new family member. They're not a new family member. So then I'm again going to assume that we're talking about somebody who can take advantage of the scheme. So we're going to assume this is an EU national who becomes British, so they're a dual national. The part B is do they have to be in the UK before applying for citizenship? Well, first of all, so the EU, the EU partner has to have settled status. You can't just apply for British citizenship, you know, just like that. So you have to obtain settled status. As the question is a British citizen, there is another route. It's called our friend indefinite leave to remain, but I'm going to make this simple. So I'm going to say that the EU citizen has to apply for settled status. Now, by having to apply for settled status, they will of course have to be present in the UK. Okay, so a family member can enter if the person here is an EU citizen. They can obtain settled status, but they have to be present most of the time for 5 years, and then they can apply for citizenship. Now, if you're asking, do you physically need to be in the UK when making the application, then the answer is no. But I really would ask you to get advice, and the reason for that is nationality applications do have rules about the really quite strict rules about the length of and the number of absences. So this is actually quite a complicated question, but if we just keep it simple and say we have an EU citizen and they have a partner who's at the moment in another EU country, the answer is they do not have to return by the 31st of December. Yes, okay, this is a quite straightforward question. So this is an EU national who's married to a British national for 10 years. They've lived abroad. The EU national now has something called pre-settled status, so that's temporary residence, if you like. And then what does the questioner have to do to become a British citizen? Well, first of all, the questioner has to get full settled status. So the questioner waits until they have been in the United Kingdom for 5 years. So that's most of the 5 years. You're allowed to be absent for 6 months in any year. And it's very straightforward. You go back to the application and just apply for settled status. That's very straightforward. So because the questioner is married to a British citizen, they can immediately apply to be a British citizen. If an EU citizen is not married to a British citizen, you have to wait 1 year. Okay. Again, I'm not going through the whole series of tests. This was in the last webinar, but I'll briefly look at the main ones. Please do check the rules on dual nationality, because that may affect your citizenship of your home country. If you are an EU national, you will normally have to do a life in the UK test. You will normally have to do an English language test. The main exception is if you have studied a degree in English. That's a degree taught in English, not necessarily a degree in an English language country. And then you will have to be in the UK for 5 years, which of course you will be because you will have settled status. And then there are rules which broadly mean that you must not be out of the UK for about 3 months a year. Again, that should not be a difficulty. And then there is a good character test, which is quite complicated, but for most people that is not a problem. We can always advise on applications. We would normally ask you to complete as much of the application as you can, but if you do that, we will then look at it for you. So there should be no difficulty in this case with the client applying. So they get the settled status first, and then they can immediately apply for British citizenship. Yes, I'm sorry. I have answered this already. I'm afraid. I'm sorry, but the difficulty here is that the son will be starting a course next year. and will therefore should be paying the international student fees. I haven't got the complete list of exceptions. There are a few, so if the questioner would like to complete our email form, I will gladly answer the questions. But in principle, courses that start after the end of December, a foreign national will count as an overseas student, and overseas student fees are higher than UK fees. Yes, I think we covered this. So you don't need to worry about paying contributions. As part of the withdrawal agreement, EU nationals in the UK can still apply for the EHIC card. So that's the medical card that covers medical treatment, basically on holidays, and also for students going to another EU country. So it may not be a difficulty returning to your home country. Some countries there's not a problem, other countries may have a residence requirement, but the important point is it will cover travelling and studying in a different EU country. So the withdrawal agreement means that EU nationals who are living in the UK after Brexit can apply for EHIC cards. They will continue to be able to apply for them. The distinction is that a British citizen, the position is unclear. It's not, there is at the moment no agreement. So you may need to think about that if you're thinking about applying for British nationality and your home country does not allow dual nationality, so that you could lose your own nationality. You will then count as a UK national. I'm sorry. And a UK national at the moment will not be entitled to apply for an EHIC card. So if you're in the position where your country doesn't allow dual nationality and you're not maybe concerned about that, but you should bear in mind that until the position on EHICs, that's medical treatment while travelling in Europe, is clearer for UK nationals, you might decide not to apply for the moment.
Next question is, does everything that's being said during this webinar for EU citizens apply to EEA nationals?
Yes, I do apologise for some of our EEA friends here. EEA, that term is less widely known than EU. So just a quick word for you, and I will not make this mistake again, I promise. So the EU is widely known. The European Economic Area is slightly wider grouping of countries that broadly follow the trade rules of the EU and free movement, but don't contribute to the budget and one or two other things. So those countries are Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein. There is a separate agreement with Switzerland. So basically those four countries, everything I have said applies equally. There are slightly more generous rules applied to Switzerland for some reason, but those four countries, exactly the same rules or slightly better, apply. So that, and in particular, the settled status scheme applies to those countries. So again, I am sorry, but it is the case that everything I've said should refer to EEA nationals and not just EU nationals.
Are there any delays currently for applications because of COVID-19? We've applied a few months ago, but nothing has yet happened.
Yes, we've had a few inquiries. I rang the helpline this morning about something else, and the message does say you should expect a decision in just over a month. Now, I think that message probably hasn't been changed. Please contact us if you don't have this number. I'm sorry, I don't have it to hand. But on the what's called the EUSS, so the European Union Settled Status Scheme website, which again doesn't say EEA, it should. There is a contact number, helpline, open Monday to Friday, 9 to 6. There's also an email address, although I would recommend phoning. So what I would suggest is call the helpline. Have your reference number, that should be 16 digits. So when you make the application, you'll get an email with a reference number that shows the application is complete. And they should be able to tell you what the position is. I know that there were a lot of applications in the last few months. People were afraid of the deadline. I have had some people we are helping who have waited more than 2 months. Please don't worry about this. The deadline is a long way away, and the government have announced that it will be extended for those who have a good reason. The other thing to say is I have no reason to think that the problems will continue, but providing your application is in time, then you are here lawfully. British law works that if you make an immigration application in time, it doesn't matter whether it hasn't been decided. Now, please, I'm not suggesting this will go on until June, but ring the number. If you still have a problem, please come back to us. Easiest way is fill in our email form, and we will call you, and we have some suggestions.
In the October newsletter, I think it's Parliament newsletter, it said that Parliament has decided to not give EU nationals with settled status the right to request a residence card. Do I need the card to start the naturalisation or application process?
It's a good question. Yes, I mean the ridiculous thing here is that the government departments are the people who don't actually need the cards. It's not really the government that is the problem. The worry is it's private organisations. So to answer the question, no, absolutely not. I mean, the government will themselves have a record. The question is, have you got settled status? The online form keeps changing. I think it might ask for the reference number, but the government will itself check its own records, so you do not need to send in the email proving you have settled status. So that is not a difficulty at all. So you just tick a box. Have you got settled status, and that's enough. They will check. They will check their own records.
I am an EU national, currently in my last year of BSc here. I'm funding through Student Finance England. Will the funding continue until the end of my degree next summer?
Yes, that's an easy one again. So all the existing arrangements for EU students. So where the course started before December 2020. Those courses of course start in the summer. So this course obviously started this year or earlier than this year, so exactly the same arrangements will continue. The funding will continue. There'll be absolutely no change for this question.
My husband got British citizenship 3 years ago. Our 5-year-old son and I have not yet applied. Do we both have to register, or is our son already a British citizen?
Now, in this case, the husband has British citizenship. And the son and the questioner haven't applied. So the first thing to say, of course, is I'm assuming that the family have settled status. There's no need for the son or the questioner to apply for British citizenship. That's got to be their decision. And again, I would make the point that you do need to check the question of dual nationality, because of course the questioner and the son might have a nationality which is different from the husband's. They might have either a different nationality, or they might have an extra nationality, and that country may not have the same rules as the husband. I'm assuming that the husband has checked and the husband can have dual nationality. So then we look at the question of, so let's look at the question of the son. Now, the question of a child already being British is slightly complicated. In this case, it's unlikely. So what I would say is, no, the child won't be British. I'm sorry. A child much older than that could be. So because the child is quite young, the parents couldn't have something called indefinite leave to remain. So the child is not British. So the question in this case, let's look at the child first. I'm assuming that the child is born in the UK. Okay, the husband, again, the father has become a British citizen. Then the child can register to be a British citizen because the father after the birth became a British citizen. But remember that there is this court case, and you might be saving £1,000 if you wait to see what the decision is. So that's the question of the son. Now the questioner, it's not actually registration. The questioner will be applying to something called naturalization, and that's not just a question of words. The rules for naturalization are much more complicated. Some people would say more difficult. They probably are more difficult than the rules for registration. Okay, so there are two separate things. So what the son will not be British. The son could register to be British. The questioner could apply for what's called naturalization. Details are on our website, but please do check with your embassy for both of you to see whether you can have dual nationality. Yes, the questioner does not need to worry. This is the question of the transitional period. So it is right that the UK left the European Union at the beginning of this year, but 2020 was what's called a transition period. So we counted as the rules apply, same rules apply during 2020. As if we were still members of the EU. So the questioner has done absolutely nothing wrong. There is no problem. The client who is Italian has voted in local elections. That is not a problem. But unless there is an arrangement with Italy, it will be different next year. This question I would not seem to have applied for settled status. So please, on the question of citizenship, you do not need to apply for British citizenship at all. On the question of settled status, there are two stages. We can give you full advice after this webinar. So there are two stages. First of all, there is a what's called scanning. So it's basically photographing your passport and taking a photograph of yourself, a selfie. And then there is an online, there is a computer form, which is very short, about 12 questions. Neither of these need you to go anywhere. I'll do the settled status first. This process can be automatic. Now, the reason lockdown may be a problem is not everyone is able to deal with, particularly the first part, the scanning part. It needs a type of phone. You need to be able to deal with apps. So if you have teenage children, you will not have a problem. So some people, we have some clients who are not able to use computers at all, and they come to us for help. And the problem is that we are closed. There's also a Richmond Council service who can help with the scanning, and they are closed. At the moment we don't have a date when we're going to reopen, so it's only for the people who cannot deal with the application themselves. Okay. Citizenship is slightly different, because there are two tests. You've got to do a life in the UK test and an English language test. Now, apart from the lockdown periods, so until during the course of the summer, these services were open, and we are hoping that this second lockdown finishes in early December. So again, this should not be a problem for very long. So as far as either of these concerned, the question may be a general one, but if the questioner is asking you, how do I apply for settled status, how do I apply for British nationality, then please contact us, give us a bit more detail. When did you come to the UK, things like this. and we will reply to you.
I don't have my card showing my indefinite leave to remain or any evidence of it. How do I prove that I have indefinite leave to remain? It was gained in 2002.
Okay, now this question is asking about something called indefinite leave to remain. Now, the only reason why this is important is because if you have indefinite leave to remain, you don't have to apply for settled status. So if, for example, the questioner has applied already for settled status, that none of this matters. If they're thinking about applying for settled status, again, it doesn't matter. So it's only where, and we sometimes get people who say, you know, this is too complicated, I don't want to bother with this. By the way, the settled status application, as many of you will know, is free. There is no fee. If the questioner has indefinite leave to remain, they do not have to apply for settled status. So this is, apart from Irish citizens and British citizens, these are the two people in three categories who do not need to apply. So what if you don't have your card? Now, indefinite leave to remain, you had to apply for it, from about the late 1990s to 2006, you got a card. Before that, you got a stamp in your passport. So it's not uncommon. I have a few cases, but they're all non-European Union cases, non-EEA cases, I'm sorry, where the person has lost their passport or lost their card. It's actually very easy. You can apply for either a replacement card, or you can apply for a card. It's called a residence card. You can apply for a card if you previously didn't have one, because the stamp was in the passport. So this is quite straightforward, and while we were waiting to start, I've checked the fee is £56, so it's not a huge amount. I don't have the link to hand, so if the questioner is in the position that they don't want to apply for settled status, or maybe they're unsure about it, and they're worried about the indefinite leave to remain, if they email us, I will send them the link. It's a very easy form to fill in. There is one thing to say, that if you have you can't find the card or the passport, you will have to report the loss to the police, who probably will not be interested, but you will need to get a reference number. This is to stop fraud, obviously, so it might be that you haven't seen the card for 10 years, but that is a requirement. So I can send the questioner the way they can apply for either a replacement or a new residence card if they email us via the address on the website.
In regards to the court case about fees, is this just regarding children or also applications for adults?
Yes, that's a good question. I have checked this. It's actually only about children. I appreciate I think it's about 39. It's even more for adults. The naturalization fee is about £1,300. So I'm not aware of any court cases about the fee for adults, but this fee is definitely only about children.
Do we still have to have the citizenship ceremonies because of lockdown, and will this delay me becoming British?
This is an easy one. I'm afraid the answer is yes and yes. It is a requirement in most countries. It is to have a ceremony. We are quite late. We had this about 20 years ago. It is a requirement, so you're not a full British citizen, until the naturalization ceremony. There obviously will be ceremonies that will not be taking place, but they were until recently with distancing. So there will be a delay, but hopefully the latest lockdown will not last, we hope, more than a month. I am sorry, but there is no way around this. Sorry. Oh, that's a good question. Right, very good question. I probably should have included this question on my slides. I mean, there are really, I think, three. So the first one I think we did mention is it's not clear if a British citizen can obtain an EHIC card. That's not, there are discussions, but it's not clear if there will be an agreement. Now, what I mean by this is somebody who's only a British citizen. So if you apply and you can keep your own nationality, there is no question you still count as an EU citizen for the EHIC rules. The second point is, and really probably the most important one, is if you are an EU citizen, and that includes being a dual national, so this will only affect those who lose their nationality if they become British, you lose your free movement rights. Okay, so if you are a French citizen, you have settled status, you can remain in the UK, you're resident here, you can work here, fine. You can obviously return to France, work there. But you're still an EU citizen, even though the UK has left the European Union and the EEA. So as a French citizen, you can work, you can freely move to Germany, to Portugal, to Estonia. So you have your free movement rights. And this, importantly, applies to an EU national who became a British national. So it's that way around. So you're an EU national who moves to the UK, you obtain British nationality, you're allowed to keep your own nationality, you're what's called a dual national. Even though you're a dual national, you still count as an EU citizen. So you're a dual French British citizen, you still have your rights of free movement, and you can then, again, the same example, you can move freely to Germany, you can work in Germany and the other EU states. So those, I said there were three, I've forgotten the third one, but so the main ones I can think of are the EHIC and the question of free movement. Those are the two. If I think of the third one, I'll send it in my email updates.
This is our last question, Mike.
Oh.
Yeah. So I came to the UK in July 2017. It's a family, and we have pre-settled status. What's the earliest that we can apply for citizenship?
Okay, so let's assume the whole family came together. Let's make it easy. The client has pre-settled status. The questioner, sorry, has pre-settled status. So they came in July 2017. So they're 5 years in the UK. Remember, they must spend most of each of the 5 years in the UK. 5 years will be July 2022. So even though that's after the date for applying for settled status, doesn't matter, they've applied for pre-settled status. So in July 2022, so it's not 5 years after they got the pre-settled status, it's 5 years after arriving in the UK. So in July 2022, the questioner and their family can apply for settled status. So they've got full residence. I'm assuming by the question that neither of them are British, so they then have to wait 1 year. So the answer is the questioner can apply for, and their family can apply for citizenship in July 2023. Okay. In practice, it might be a bit longer than that because you have to do the two tests. You know, hopefully we'll then be over the virus and everything will be back to normal and we won't have the delays. So that's going to be the earliest date. I should say that with most countries, nationality law doesn't usually change very much. Our basic nationality law is 1981. It hasn't changed for nearly 40 years. So it's very, very unlikely that the rules will change at all in those few years, in the time up to when the questioner can apply. But if you have any more questions that you want answered, and in particular if you have questions with particular details that you want to go into, please feel free to contact us. On our website there is an email form. If you complete that, our emails are checked every day and we should be able to get back to you in 3 to 5 working days.
So thank you very much for those who attended the webinar this afternoon, and I hope that you found it interesting. Thank you very much also to those who asked questions. I certainly found that the questions very complex and very interesting, and I hope that we were able to answer those questions for you. If we weren't able to answer those questions, remember that although the webinar is finished at the moment, we are still here for you. We have a special project that's funded by Richmond Council that enables EU citizens who live, work or study in the borough to get help from us. We can currently only offer assistance by phone and email because of the COVID-19 restrictions. However, details how to contact us are on our website. You've seen that behind the presenters today. It's citizensadvicerichmond.org. We also have a mailing list that you can sign up to that we will pass on updates about any of the items we've talked about today, or anything else useful that happens with the settled status scheme, or with any other updates that we think is necessary for EU citizens. So we send out those newsletters whenever, and we currently have just over 200 people on that on that mailing list. So please sign up to that if you're interested, and you will receive further updates from us. So I'd just like to finish up by thanking my colleague Mike Haran for his expert presentation and also skillful handling of all the questions that you asked. As I said, they seem to be very complex questions, and Mike handled those with his customary skill and tact. If you do have any further questions, or you felt your questions weren't answered, then of course please email us or contact us via our website later on. I'd also like to thank Bradley for handling the questions and typing out the questions onto the screen so you can see them. And in the background, I'd like to thank David, Alex and Sarah, who helped with a lot of work in the background that you won't have gone on to see. So thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to say goodbye now and close the webinar. But remember, we are still here from you. You can contact us via our website, by telephone or by email. Thank you very much for everyone for attending.